Good morning, everyone. And I want to thank everybody for coming this morning, especially Councilman Freddie O'Connell from the 19th Councilmanic District, who is here today. I know he, amongst all our councilmen, is as concerned about crime as anyone, just because of the areas that he represents. So today, I'm very pleased to announce Project Safe Nashville. It is our city's largest ever interagency collaboration to fight gun crime in Nashville. Here's why we're doing it. With developments in science and technology and the ability to use shell casings to track and find crime guns that have been used in crimes and take them off the street, we can make Nashville a safer place for all of us. We know that these guns, if they remain in the wrong hands, are likely to wind up being used in additional potentially deadly crimes. With this advance in technology and science, it's an opportunity for us to prevent homicides and other crimes in the city of Nashville. It's a chance to save lives, and we know that this is a step that we have to take to give our young people an opportunity to fulfill the lives they have in front of them. Public safety is not only my top concern, it is the top concern of everyone who stands up here with me. And Project Safe Nashville is an important step that we are all committed to taking to make this the safest city in America. I'm grateful to all the agencies that have decided to come together in this really unprecedented collaboration in the city of Nashville. And I'd like to introduce and thank each one of them individually. First, U.S. Attorney Don Cochran. To my left, your right, Marcus Watson, the special agent in charge with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives. We call it the ATF, I guess everybody does at this point. Metro Nashville Police Chief Steve Anderson, Davidson County District Attorney General Glenn Funk, and Assistant District Attorney General Jenny Charles, who is an expert on gun crime. And after being robbed at gunpoint herself when she was just 16 years old, is driven every day to help and protect the city of Nashville when it comes to gun crime. We also have with us M.A. Moe Meyers, a special agent in charge of the Memphis Division of the FBI, and Brad Nealon with the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. So without this kind of collaboration, our city can't make the progress on this issue that we need to make. So I want to, on behalf of the residents of metropolitan Nashville and Davidson County, say to each one of you, thank you very much for coming together. Thank you very much for working to make Nashville the safest city in the United States. And now I'd like to turn it over to Chief Anderson for a few remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I want to say again that this is the most comprehensive program that we, especially as a team, have implemented. And the goal is to make our city as safe as it can possibly be. And when I say this city, I mean all of this city. I mean the suburbs, I mean the inner city, I mean all across Nashville, even across county lines, assisting other agencies as those guns travel across the county lines, crime here in Nashville, crime in other counties. And over these past years, our officers out on the street have been doing a very good job of using science in their investigation, collecting shell casings at crime scenes. And it'll be the task of the crime gun unit to lead an enhanced full-time effort in close partnership with the ATF and others to identify those persons who are pulling the triggers on our street. And once identified, those who pose a real danger to our community will be prosecuted on the federal level whenever possible. The 6 detectives and 1 sergeant, Sergeant Joe Winter, is in charge of the unit sitting here on the front row. They're all experienced gang detectives, and they're all very familiar with gun violence in our city. And they're presently working on a number of cases and investigations and looking to how these weapons are used on our street. I sat down with the leadership of this unit yesterday and looked at charts that they had compiled, showed where guns have been used and identified, used in various places. This chart covered a whole conference table. And Joe was very instrumental in putting that together and led me through a 10-minute nonstop briefing on how each of these crimes were connected and the cases they were presently working on. And I certainly want to thank the leadership of our city, past and present, for seeing the reality of a full-service crime lab and making sure that we have everything in the way of science to help us in our investigations. And within our crime lab is the firearms unit, using microscopic markings on shell casings to identify these guns, showing that the same guns are used in different places across Nashville. As I said earlier, shell casings are gathered at every crime scene. And in addition, every gun seized by our police department is test fired, and those results are placed in the national database. Think of it this way: your fingerprints are one of a kind. The markings on these shell casings and on the projectiles are one of a kind, and they can be matched up accordingly. Let me give you an example. I'm picking up a weapon here. I assure you it's unloaded and it's rendered safe. You can see the red stop in it. This gun is an example. It was seized from the bedroom of a convicted felon, convicted on drug charges, by probation officers and our gang unit. When this gun was test fired and the results analyzed, this same weapon was involved in a shooting on Westchester Drive in 2015, Forest Park Road in 2015, and Gwenwood Drive in 2015. So you can see how this gives our investigators many leads to follow as they're trying to identify who is going about the city using guns to perpetrate their violence. And I might say the convicted felon who was in possession of this gun is now in federal prison. And certainly I want to thank Mayor Briley for realizing and understanding that the funding is there to carry out this vital work, and certainly appreciative to United States Attorney Don Cochran and all of our partners, ATF, FBI, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, to make Project Safe Nashville a reality here in Nashville and do all that we can to make Nashville as safe as it can possibly be. Thank you.
Prevent tomorrow's shootings by solving and prosecuting yesterday's shootings today. That's simply stated the premise behind the initiative that we announced today. We want to prevent shootings from happening tomorrow by solving and prosecuting the shootings that happened yesterday today. The Project Safe Nashville, although simple in its premise, is dramatic in its scale, as you can tell by the folks who are with me here and I'm privileged to share the podium with today. In fact, as the mayor said, this is the largest gun crime initiative in the history of metropolitan Nashville. I'd like to thank Mayor Briley for his wholehearted support of this program, and Chief Anderson and the Metro Nashville Police Department for their hard work in making it a reality. At the county and state level, thanks are due to Davidson County District Attorney General Glenn Funk and TBI Director David Roush for their steadfast support of this effort. And I'm deeply grateful that the federal partners that I represent as a United States Attorney are bringing their significant resources and experience to this fight. The ATF, represented here today by Special Agent in Charge Marcus Watson, provides the project with their expertise in firearms investigation, while the FBI, which is also represented by their Special Agent in Charge Moe Meyers, has the vital role of focusing on violent robbers and carjackers who commit federal gun crimes. As the U.S. Attorney here in Nashville, one of my top priorities is fighting violent crime. The message that's been sent to me by my bosses over the 16 months I've been in this office, first Attorney General Jeff Sessions and now Acting Attorney General Matt Whitaker, has been unmistakably clear. My job is not to explain away high violent crime rates. It's to work with our federal, state, and local law enforcement partners to bring them down, period. To that end, my office has stepped up its prosecution of armed and violent offenders, and last year we doubled the number of federal firearms defendants that the office charged. Our efforts, together with the excellent work of the Metro Nashville Police Department and everyone else that you see on this stage, are having positive results, as evidenced by a 22% reduction in the number of murders last year in 2018. That homicide rate, though, is still double what it was just 5 years ago. And for our neighbors whose families are forever shattered by violence, families like children, families who have children like Daniela Medina, who was just turning 18 when she became Nashville's first homicide victim of 2019 a few weeks ago. For those families, the promise of Nashville as the IT city falls flat. We can and we must do better for those citizens of our community. Project Safe Nashville is a plan to do just that. The project is a proactive, forensic-based, data-driven strategy to reduce violent crime by focusing on the rapid collection, analysis, and investigation of gun crime evidence, such as recovered shell casings like these that are left on the streets of Nashville every single night, and guns like this that are used to commit crime. Taking these shell casings and guns like this and modern technologies like the ATF's National Integrated Ballistic Information Center or Network, or NIBIN, the Joint Task Force of Metro Nashville Police and ATF agents, detectives, and analysts will collect and accurately identify active trigger pullers, disrupt their criminal activity, and prevent future violence. Quite simply, we are chasing the guns that the evidence tells us are involved in shootings. And when we intend to stop whoever's behind that gun, without regard for who they are, where they live, or what they look like. By removing guns from the hands of those who the evidence tells us used them yesterday, and by holding them accountable for their violence, we'll stop the next shooting from happening tomorrow. So what I wanted to do now is to show you two charts that I brought today over here to the side. These are called NIBIN leads. And these are the documents, the chief talked about the firearms lab. The NIBIN unit there at the firearms lab produces documents like these that are sent to this new crime gun unit. And these documents, they tell a story. To an experienced investigator looking at a document like that, he immediately knows the story, and that's the story of a gun. In this case, I brought one telling the story of this gun that the chief has already shown you. So that gun we now know is that gun in the center circled in red. When it's circled in red in NIBIN language, that means it's a gun that we have in our possession. That's how we know the make, model, and serial number of this gun. Chief told you the end of this story. It happened in February of 2016 down here on the lower right-hand part of this chart when the probation officers and Metro Nashville officers were doing a check of somebody who was on probation for a felony. They found that he possessed this firearm. Not only that, when he possessed it, it was loaded, and it was loaded with an extended magazine that had extra rounds in it, and another loaded magazine was nearby. So that gun was taken from that individual. It was taken to the crime lab. As the chief said, it was test fired, as all guns are, and when it was, the shell casings that it shot out, like this one, are analyzed, and the gun leaves a fingerprint, as the chief said. So when that data was entered into the NIBIN system, we learned the rest of that gun's story. And what we learned was that it had been involved in 3 shooting incidents linked together by NIBIN. Those are NIBIN links that would give an investigator information to work with. So one of those occurred about a month before it was seized from the felon. This one is a shooting incident involving actually 2 guns. Here's the casings that were left on the ground, 4 9mm casings from the Ruger, as well as 3 casings left from a .45 caliber semi-automatic pistol that has not been recovered. So at that crime scene, there was 2 guns firing. Unclear from the report when we went back and looked at it whether they were shooting at each other or shooting at somebody or just shooting. But at any rate, we have an incident right here that's linked to that gun. Only 2 weeks before that, we have an incident. The damaged property was a vehicle parked in an apartment parking lot that this gun shot up. It's got, I believe, that's 6 9mm casings that were fired, so at least 6 times that gun fired in that parking lot at that vehicle. And then about 6 months before that, that gun was also used in a shot-fired call where nobody was arrested, nobody was suspects were present. No one was present when the cops got there. But 18 rounds from this gun, at least, were fired in that incident. So that's the story of that particular gun that chart tells. And I think we would probably all agree that that's a good story in the sense that we took a crime gun off the street. This gun was brought over here by Sergeant Winter this morning from the Metro Nashville property room, so it will not be committing any more crimes on the streets of Nashville. And it's also a good story in the sense that that individual was sentenced being a felon in possession of a firearm and is currently serving a 4-year sentence in the federal prison system. The other chart I brought today tells a different story. And I chose it because of the story it tells, and I think the story it tells us why we need this initiative and why we need this unit. This story is the story of this gun at the top, a .40 caliber gun. We don't know the make, model, or serial number because that gun's still out there. And we don't know the ending of this story, but we already know it's been tragic. Because that story starts with this incident, which actually was 6 months ago yesterday in Antioch, Tennessee. We've redacted off addresses and incident numbers and things like that off these NIBIN leads. But the address in Antioch, Tennessee that's on the actual lead, it's an aggravated assault. It's actually if you go back and look at the report, it's actually a drive-by shooting of a house that people were in at the time. And you can see there was at least 3 firearms involved in that incident, one of which was an assault rifle. We know that because there were 10 casings of .223 ammunition, which is military-style, M16-style assault, the ammunition that would be in one of those type weapons. And it was found at the scene. There was also a casing of a 9mm that's never been recovered that was found at the scene. But for our purposes, most importantly, there were 9 casings of this .40 caliber that were fired into this occupied house. Because the story continues because only 5 days later, that same gun is used in an armed robbery. The robbery was a group of individuals in a van getting ready to go to work. 2 robbers came up to them and tried to rob them. Interestingly, this gun has been recovered, you see, because it's circled in red and we know the serial number. That gun was taken from the robber by one of the victims during the robbery. Took it actually, not before it fired one casing that was in the van, but that gun's been recovered. This gun, this .40 caliber, however, the individual who shot that, we don't know who that was. He left the scene, but he fired at least 6 times because there were 6 shell casings from that firearm and fired into a van full of people. Then the same gun, exactly 1 week later, is involved in a homicide in Antioch, Tennessee. So, ladies and gentlemen, what we know, just to be clear about this firearm, is first of all that it's almost certainly still out there. It has not been recovered, so probably still on the streets of Nashville. We know that at least at one time it was the hands of somebody for this 2-week period who was perfectly willing to use it over and over again. There's 16 shots at least fired by that handgun in less than a 2-week period. And what we also know, and we often see in these kind of incidents, is there's an escalating pattern of violence, from a drive-by shooting with people in a house, to an armed robbery where shots are fired at a van with people in it, to a murder. And so I don't think it's overly dramatic to say that this gun, in effect, is a ticking time bomb out there on the streets of Nashville, Tennessee. And we don't know when it's going to be used again. Could be by the end of this press conference today. It's been used for another aggravated assault or a robbery or murder. Ladies and gentlemen, I speak for everyone here on this stage today when I make this promise. To anyone who uses a crime gun, whether it's a gun like this one possessed by a felon, or whether it's a gun like that .40 caliber that we know the evidence shows us is out there committing crimes on the streets of Nashville, we are coming after you with this new task force and with all the resources we have together on this stage with all these agencies. And we will take back our city and our streets for all the citizens of this magnificent city. Thank you for your time.
Good morning. Firearm violence has plagued almost every major city throughout the United States, and as illustrated very well by U.S. Attorney Cochran, Nashville is no exception. When I first got here, one of the first meetings I had was with U.S. Attorney Cochran, and we talked about firearm violence in Nashville and what could we do. Not maybe a month later, the Waffle House shooting happened, and myself and Chief Anderson were baptized by fire together trying to solve that crime. So, Nashville, like most major cities, has had their struggles. Project Safe Nashville is an absolute great example of partnershiping and how we can work together to solve a problem. No new resources, just a reconfiguring of the existing personnel working smarter. ATF's not the biggest agency, but we're very effective at what we do. Crime gun intelligence tells us who the trigger pullers are, how to go after them, and NIBIN points us in the right direction. Today represents a great opportunity for us as a community to work together. I look forward to our men and women working together and being back before you with some very good success stories in the very short future. So I'd like to thank the mayor, Chief Anderson, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and the state and local partners here, and our federal partners, obviously, and putting territories aside and say, hey, let's solve the problem. Let's work together to make sure guns like this one aren't in the hands of people who don't legally possess them and are not out in our communities making it unsafe. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Moe Meyers. I'm the special agent in charge of the Memphis Field Office, which covers the Middle District of Tennessee as well as the Western District. I, as well, am pleased that we have this opportunity to partner with not only Metropolitan Nashville, but also ATF and TBI. One of our top priorities is the reduction of violent crime. And through partnerships, we've learned over the years that the task force environment is the best place to achieve the results that we all desire. Through Project Safe Nashville, the FBI's Violent Crimes Task Force, which includes Metro Nashville Police Department members, will continue to work with our federal, state, and local law enforcement partners to ensure the safety and security of our neighborhoods. The FBI is committed to supporting the new crime gun unit and continuing to look closely at local robbery cases that impact interstate commerce. Some examples of this are convenience store robberies and drugstore robberies, in addition to the carjackings mentioned earlier, so that those suspects, once identified, can be federally prosecuted by the U.S. Attorney's Office whenever possible. We want to send a strong message to criminals who engage in violent crime that we will be aggressive in using these additional tools, specifically NIBIN, so that we can work as a team to reduce violent crime in our neighborhoods. Thank you.